Give us a bit of the history again since 2003 and what you've found since.
Yeah, so the Reconciliation Barometer really aims to give South Africans a voice in policy making by asking them what they think of various public institutions. And we're particularly interested in public institutions, so that'll be levels of government, the judiciary, representatives or political parties. And this allows us to track how we're progressing as a country. It allows us to measure certain objectives towards the NDP goals, for example, and it gives us a better sense of whether South Africa is moving in the right direction according to its citizens.
And you're saying the perceptions, the trust in representatives declining. So is that a trend over time? It's got worse and worse, or do we have years when trust goes up and down? How does it look over time?
Yeah, so we've asked the exact same question to South Africans over the last few years, which allows us to track these changes in public opinion. And what we see generally is that levels of public trust in various institutions are actually quite low in South Africa. So South Africans are not very confident in many institutions. And this does sort of change over time. So between 2017 and 2019, for example, we saw quite an increase in public trust across a variety of institutions. And we presume that this has a lot to do with the sort of change in administration at a national level, a greater sense of hope and anticipation that things would improve since then. But between 2019 and 2021, when we conducted the last round of the survey, we've seen these attitudes become slightly more negative about public trust in various institutions. And again, we can sort of put this down to perhaps the economic shock that people have experienced, the COVID pandemic, greater emphasis on corruption, the Zondo Commission, for example, but also a lot of the PPE scandals. So generally, across the board, we see that levels of public confidence have declined in the last 2 years. Although some institutions do fare relatively well, for example, such as the media, which plays a very important role in informing South Africans about what's happening and holding power to account, of course.
Well, we were talking about the SABC, so I'm very happy to hear that the SABC considered to be the most trustworthy institution among those that you survey. Has it improved over time? What's the trend there with the SABC?
So the SABC typically comes out on top of our survey in terms of the institutions that most South Africans trust. And the reason for that is, of course, the good work that the SABC does, but I think it also has to do with the wide variety of channels and broadcast stations that the SABC has. So it's one of the few institutions that can speak to South Africans in their vernacular language. So that's very important for why people trust the SABC. And if we compare it to other surveys, for example, like the Afrobarometer survey, again, it's very consistent that South Africans have a high degree of trust in both the national and sort of private broadcasters as well. So the SABC has always played a very important role in keeping South Africans informed, but perhaps more so than ever before with the COVID pandemic, keeping people abreast as to the latest developments with lockdown restrictions, but also sort of scientific discussions about COVID. So it's very important, of course, that people trust the SABC as it's, the primary source of information for many, many South Africans.
That's very interesting. So overall, however, you're talking about this decline in trust, but you said there was a blip in 2017. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was that optimism when President Cyril Ramaphosa came in. The new dawn, the new era, the cleanup. But like you say, some of that hope has been lost over time. However, he enjoys a better rating than the ANC. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think we can attribute a lot of the sort of more optimistic attitudes we saw in our 2019 survey to a lot of the sort of the expectations that President Cyril Ramaphosa would be able to undo a lot of the sort of very unpopular decisions that former President Jacob Zuma was taking towards the end of his tenure. So that's what we saw in 2019. However, what we're seeing now is that the project of governance is actually a lot more difficult and complicated than perhaps anyone anticipated. So people, I think, are slightly let down by the expectations that were created in 2018 and 2019. And of course, the COVID pandemic has made the situation much more difficult. But in our survey, we asked South Africans, how much confidence do you have in political parties, for example? And we find that a lot more people are confident in the president than the ANC, his party, or opposition parties, for example. And compared to other representatives or institutions such as the public protector or the deputy president, the president comes out with a much stronger public approval rating, but within the context of generally low levels of confidence in various institutions.